An automobile designed like a sculpture from a modern artist. A steel sheet streamlined silvery shark. Some also think of it as a surface missile from a Flash Gordon movie of the 30s. This car gives the viewer a lot of room for imagination. The 1937 Tatra T87, in its time, avant-garde on four wheels. Two years before the war began, the Czech car manufacturer presents the T87 as a successor of the T77, built only 300 times. What follows is the new vehicle philosophy from the traditional company. A self-supporting structure made of sheet steel, with a streamlined body design and an air-cooled engine at the rear. At a time when most cars are still reminiscent of coaches, the T87 should be a revolution in automotive manufacture. Tatra collector Ulrich Platzek found his 87 quite near the Tatra plant in what is today the Czech Republic.
My
father was the founder of the Tatra Club. They made a trip to the factory in Nesselsdorf in spring each year, before the season started. We were allowed to look at the cars of the local club. We arrived at an old barn and my first glance fell on the rear wing of two 87s. I didn't know that the car was called Type 87. I was so fascinated and knew that I had to have a car like that.
With an engine of only 75 horsepower, the aerodynamically designed T87 reached a top speed of 150 kilometers an hour. Responsible for the advanced technology is Hans Ledwinka. The Austrian engineer is employed by Tatra since 1921 and is regarded by his countryman Ferdinand Porsche as a construction genius. Lightweight and aerodynamics are the maxims of Ledwinka. The optics break all hitherto accepted conventions in the automotive industry. For the viewer, the streamlined cars seem to come from another world. Paneled rear wheels and a long tapered and flowing rear end make the structure more aerodynamic. The tail fin is a stabilizing effect at high speeds. Large air intakes lead air to the rear engine. The hot air is discharged again over the slotted hood. The interior seems almost conventionally designed, however, with Art Deco bonds. Tatra places value on a complete instrumentation and ease of use. A good overview of itself is given by the large windows, as long as you look forward. Unusual for the 30s, the huge manually operated sunroof. In the front trunk, two spare wheels, as then poor road conditions are not uncommon. But with handling, the tail motorized streamlined car calls for concessions. Especially in the wet or in the border area, skill is required at the wheel.
It's a rear skid. The tail comes out with a stroke. The car doesn't tell you that it intends to do something. If it's driven quickly, it can be dangerous.
The reason is the unfavorable weight distribution. The air-cooled V8 weighs heavily on the rear axle, and although the 2.5-liter engine is a lightweight magnesium alloy, as was customary only for racing and high-performance cars, the V8 engine has overhead camshafts. Nevertheless, it is designed with a lame liter capacity of only 30 horsepower. Spare parts for the engine can be relatively easy to obtain now, provided you have good contacts in the Czech Republic, like Placek. In 1948, and the Czech company presents a car which is a class below the 87. The Tatra plan follows the same layout. In the rear of the aerodynamic body, a 2-liter boxer engine operates with 4 cylinders. Tatra also offers the car in Western Europe, but after 4 years and around 6,000 units sold, the responsible Politburo stops production. The manufacturer should be limited to truck production. The plan doesn't work. 1956, 6 years after the cessation of 87, its successor appears, the luxurious 603, made in 3 series. The 603 stays in production for almost 20 years. It takes over the technical layout and air-cooled V8 engine in the rear from its predecessor. Still uncommon is the shape effect of the 603, but not nearly as uncompromising as its predecessor with a huge tail fin. Technically, the luxury sedan is now mature. This specimen was used as a taxi before the revolution in Prague. Today on the road as a vintage car hire service, without problems. Owner Dirk Solomon is enthusiastic about the Tatra.
Here in the rear compartment of the engine, the V8 is air-cooled, not water-cooled. This engine, I think, is made to last. We've never had problems with this engine, and we have the car for 4 years. It hasn't stopped once. This thing runs and runs and runs. Sure, it needs fuel. It doesn't move under 16 to 17 litres, but with a V8, that is quite normal. But this is really made really sturdy and forever. Here you see the 2 turbines which suck the air. Below is a flap, which is closed when the engine is hot. Then it pulls the air in from the outside. As long as the engine is cold, like now this door is open, so it can draw air from the engine compartment. Actually quite cleverly done.
During the Cold War, the unconventional Czech shaped the streetscape of the GDR in East Berlin. Frequently, political bigwigs moved the stately sedan in black lacquer dress. For normal citizens of the GDR, the classy 4-door is hard to get. After the turning point, most Tatra owners want to get rid of their cars quickly. Only loyal Tatra fans keep the obsolete and heavy-drinking auto dinosaurs. Many former citizens of the workers' and peasant state can still remember the Tatras. Today, almost everyone finds it great. Like Uwe Steimle, the actor who grew up in the GDR and knows Tatra from his childhood.
I find these cars very beautiful, always have a bit of soul, and that is a piece of culture, and one should look after something like that. Also nice that I can sit in it. I'm driving a Wartburg. Is that nice? What I also like are the Czechs who always wanted to be a bit American. They said, before we make ourselves dependent on the Russians, we will create something better ourselves. I love these cars, like someone who comes from the West and says for me a 190 SL is great. So is a Tatra or Wartburg for me. It's always the car that you grew up with. It's great.
Well-preserved late 603s are available today for about 20,000 euros, and the supply of spare parts is largely without problems. The ideal entry Tatra for future Nostalgiker. Until 1998, Tatra cars were produced until the end with V8 rear engines, like with the Type 87. Tatra club boss Placek uses his pre-war oldie as often as possible and doesn't shy away from big distances. He regrets that the once progressive approach ultimately proved unsuccessful, and also because of the headwind of politics and industry.
The concept didn't prevail because the political situation didn't allow it. The lobby of the German car makers recognized that there was a competitor from the east that was growing and blocked it. Tatra was not allowed to build any more cars during the war, only implements of war.
The 87, which was only produced 3,000 times, only comes into question for die-hard classic car enthusiasts. Either one gives out a lot of money for a restoration copy, which then again can cost more money, or one searches for a restored copy, like the one from Ulrich Placek. After a flood in Schrobenhausen in Germany, which flooded the garage, he has to get his 87 restored a second time. True Tatra love. Today, a Tatra T87 in State 2 condition is listed for €93,000. The problem, those who have one won't let it go so quickly. The Tatra T87, avant-garde luxury from Czechoslovakia.